Hello my friend, it's Doreen Virtue, and this is my video to talk about my life-changing experiences with Jesus of Nazareth, because many of you have asked about why my work is changing, and so I feel like I owe this to you to give you some backstory and explanation as to what I know so far. I want to start with sending you lots of love and letting you know I respect you very much, and I'm not here to try to convert anyone or convince anyone, but to share my truth, and if it resonates with you, beautiful, and if it doesn't, maybe it brings up some truth in you that you weren't even aware of before. So we're all working together on this. I was raised in two churches, and they were Unity First, which is a non-denominational, what they call a New Thought religion. New Thought means that it's based on the work of this teacher around the turn of the last century that's Phineas Quimby. And Phineas Quimby was a man who purported to study the Gospels of how Jesus healed, and then he utilized these methods that he learned to heal others. And so out of that came 3 or 4 churches. One of them was Unity. One of them was Christian Science. Mary Baker Eddy was actually had a healing and was a patient of Phineas Quimby. Divine Science and Religious Science. And these are not to be confused with Scientology, which was L. Ron Hubbard, a science fiction author. These three or 4 New Thought churches were built on Phineas Quimby's work. And so I was raised this way, and I was raised with the premise of all of them is God is love. And that's in the Bible. I totally agree with that. And they brought in Jesus' teachings, but it was very interesting looking back. I really feel like they cherry-picked a lot of the Bible passages, and so what I received is what I now call a teddy bear version of Jesus. You know, cuddly Jesus, teddy bear, love, 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 positive, 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 and that's beautiful. I mean, I wouldn't change that for anything. I always felt lucky when I met people who were raised in very guilt-based religions, and they had to deal with healing themselves of a lot of guilt. And so I didn't know any different. When I was in my adolescence, I had moved out of the house right after graduating from high school, so I was 17 years old, and I moved in with my girlfriend Kathy and her boyfriend in the high desert area. And one night I was in my bedroom and I saw these 3 figures coming toward me. And I had this knowingness that one was Jesus and one was Mother Mary, and then there was another man who was part of them, and I can guess who it was, but at the time I had no knowingness. But it was very much Jesus and Mary coming toward me. And in the New Thought tradition, there's not a lot of talk about Mary except for around Christmas time. So this was not something also that I was raised to venerate or you know, pray to Mother Mary or anything like that. I was simply given the story in the book of Luke about her giving birth to baby Jesus in the manger. Every Christmas we would hear that. And so when I saw these 2 figures coming at me, my first thought was, oh my gosh, they're coming to take me to heaven. I'm dying. And I didn't have any sense of, you know, that I was being punished or rebuked in any way. It was more of a sense of, well, maybe it's my time to go. And at first I fought this because I was 17 years old. I seemed to have a lot to live for. But then I just surrendered to it. I relaxed, and they came to me and they passed through me. And my first thought was, I've been born again. And it felt this strong connection to Jesus after that. But I didn't have any framework for it. I don't even know if I told Kathy. It just seemed like such a mind-blowing experience that I didn't have any place to put this or books to read. At the time, you know, I didn't have any money to pay for a spiritual counselor or anything, and I didn't have any framework of a traditional church. So I just kept this to myself, but I felt this personal relationship with Jesus that I hadn't felt before. And then as I grew up and was guided to go back to college, and became a psychotherapist, and my first jobs as a psychotherapist were helping people who were healing from addictions like drugs and alcohol, and it was very harsh at times because these were very toughened people, and I wasn't used to this. I come from this place of God is love, let's think positive, and it was difficult in that kind of situation to have people relate to me because they saw me, and still to this day I see, and I've heard how many people see me as so sweet and everything, and so in that harsh energy of the working with the drugs and alcohol, I felt like I learned so much. I came to confront my own eating disorder at that time, because I was using ice cream when I would leave. This is before I was a vegan. I was using dairy ice cream when I would leave work to deal with my upsetting feelings that I hadn't done enough for these people who were suffering so much. And once I confronted that, I joined Overeaters Anonymous and really worked a good program with a sponsor of healing my eating disorder, and then decided to shift my psychotherapy practice to an eating disorder practice, and had an outpatient clinic that was very successful. In fact, it was so successful that I was really booked up, and I had lots of case studies of people having successes, and that led to me writing a book called The Yo-Yo Diet Syndrome, about your weight fluctuating because of your emotions. And that was one of the early books about linking emotions to overeating. It really wasn't talked about much back in those days. And then that propelled me to be all over the place on TV and radio, to the point where I wasn't hardly home. And so I had to give my private practice to a coworker of mine who I trusted. And so that was kind of the end of that part. I went back to private practice a couple other times, but I was just so busy after that, teaching on at that time, national level on television and radio, that having a private practice just wasn't in my cards. And then I was doing the eating disorder practice, and in 1995, as you know, is when I had my traumatic experience where the angels saved my life in an armed carjacking in 1995. And then that experience caused me to do research on what was going on with this profound experience. And I found, lo and behold, there was a lot of other people who'd had these experiences where they'd heard a voice. And remember, I was trained as a psychotherapist, where we were taught that if you hear a voice, it's a sign of auditory hallucinations or schizophrenia. So this was very unusual for me to be taking these voices at a whole different level and looking at the studies that were done about the difference between hallucinations and the true voice of the divine. And there was a marked distinction, mostly that if it's a true divine voice, it's a voice of love and encouragement, where if it's a lower voice or the imagination, it's very discouraging and very times encouraging you to do something that's very harmful to yourself or others. And that would be a sign of an auditory hallucination, or even the lower energy. You might call it ego or evil or the devil, negativity, telling you what to do. And so we never want to listen to that voice, whether it's from a living human or a spirit. We want to test the spirits always. So after that experience where I was teaching about angels, then I was thrust into touring with the Whole Life Expo, which was, they were so kind to me. It was a touring New Age community. And even though I had been raised in New Thought tradition, I wasn't exposed ever to the New Age world. And I found it so fascinating and interesting, and it seemed compatible with what I'd been raised in. So I really started studying things like chakras and crystals and meditation and yoga and many different deities from different cultures. I found them all fascinating. And I found myself less and less talking to Jesus, and I started to think of Jesus as one of the Ascended Masters. And I wrote a book about it called Archangels and Ascended Masters, which was really a research project of mine, because I wanted to know, who are these beings? I heard everyone talk about Saint Germain, and I wanted to know, is he a Catholic saint? Turns out he's not. He's a man who was considered to be very spiritually gifted, who came from a province in France called Saint-Germain. And so he was from Saint-Germain. He wasn't a saint himself. And I heard people talking about ETs, and I wanted to look into that. And there's nothing wrong with doing research, but I do want to apologize if I in any way influenced you away from Jesus by my studies and writings and teachings, and cards about archangels and ascended masters, because that wasn't my intention in any way, and I didn't know what I do now and what I'm sharing with you. And I'm rewriting the old book. Archangels and Ascended Masters won't be around anymore, nor will the Ascended Masters cards. They've shown me that a lot of the work I've done has been in the light and has helped people to reconnect with God, which was always my purpose and intention. The Ascended Masters, there's some in there that I don't trust, so I'd ask you not to read that book. Donate it, or just get rid of it. And, it's part of your spiritual journey as well as mine that we're doing together. And I'm redoing the Ascended Masters cards so that it's aligned with God's will. And so that was my hiccup going on that side. And I do have told God, that I didn't know what I was doing, and I've been forgiven for this. And I really feel like spiritual exploration and looking at different paths is something that's part of our journey, just like traveling to different countries can open you up. So I think that in the long run it did more good than any kind of harm. And especially now that I'm been given this new assignment, which I want to talk with you about. So I've been teaching about angels since I had my life saved in 1995. I write a weekly column about true angel experiences. Maybe you've seen it in Woman's World magazine, and have been very happy with this, very happy, and I'm still happy. So nothing's changed. I'm still the angel lady, still talking about angels, but it's become more refined and more specific. So as you may know, Michael and I moved from our house in last year in May of 2016. We moved to a ranch. Both Michael and I are animal lovers. We're 100% vegan. We'd been rescuing animals where we used to live, and we'd run out of room, and we couldn't find any place that we could afford that gave us enough room. And so Michael had found this place that had been basically abandoned, and it had been on the market for 4 years, and it was half price. And we came and saw it and gave an offer. We never thought they'd accept, but they said yes. So we thought, well, then we're supposed to go here. And so now we're on this big ranch, and we've had to hire help. And most of all, it's just been living in the country has been life-changing. Just being outside more often. We moved into a tiny house. Our old house was probably average size is 3,000 square feet, which is probably big. But that seemed like his average size. And now we live in a 1,000 square foot house. We live in this postage stamp of a house, and we have 13 dogs and cats, and so it's very tiny. But we have this backyard where we have over 200 rescue animals. It's pushing 250 now, because yesterday our pigs gave birth. The ones that showed up on December 12th that just walked to our ranch from a bacon farm, and one morning we woke up and these domestic pigs were on our front door on December 12th, 2016. And we knew immediately that they were going to slaughter and that they'd come to us for refuge. And so we found their owner, and we offered to buy them from him. It's, you think, well, that's an ethical thing because then it encourages him to get more. But he said he was going out of the business. But he told us that many of the pigs were pregnant that we just bought, and the males were all neutered. So yesterday, 2 of the pigs gave birth, and we have 18 new pigs, and it looks like a few others are pregnant too of those 16. And so we'll neuter the males and keep them all, of course. But the point is that just being out in the country like this, having space outside in God's nature, just to breathe and pray. I mean, this is church for many people, and it certainly is part of it for Michael and me. We go to a regular church. We go to an Anglican church, also known as Episcopal, which is welcoming to all lifestyles. It's beautiful. There's no sense of judgment. They know my background, that I've come from the New Age, and there's no sense of judging. There's many people in the gay community there. There's a ordained female priest. Everyone's welcome there, and they say because Christ welcomed everybody. So it's been really beautiful finding a love-based church that's inclusive, and then spending time out in the country has been beautiful. And I hope you can do this. If you don't live in the country just to take time to go out and be in nature, go camping or hiking. Sitting in nature is especially therapeutic. So I was at church early January of 2017, and a woman was being introduced who I'd never met before, and she was introduced because of all the volunteer work she'd been doing, and she came across as so pure. I mean, I could feel this light around her. I could feel her heart being so genuine, so filled with love, so generous, genuinely generous. None of that giving in order to get accolades or giving in order to be, and no hidden agendas to her giving. It was just pure giving. And so I was looking at her, and all of a sudden, my vision of her disappeared. And everyone else disappeared in the church, and the church disappeared, and all I saw was Jesus standing in front of me, more clear than I've ever seen him before, as clear as you can see me, opaque and three-dimensional. And I saw his Sacred Heart. Now, a Sacred Heart is an image I'm familiar with, but I wasn't raised Catholic, which Sacred Heart is most associated with. And yet it was so real, and so it was kind of like one of those, of course, it was natural. And then from his Sacred Heart, these lights came out, and they were coming out in all directions, up and down and all around, just golden white light coming from his heart. And it was coming onto me, but I had a sense that everyone was receiving this. It wasn't just for me. And just this outpouring of healing love. And to this day, I don't remember anything else of the service at all. I was so bowled over that I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even fathom what had happened because, this was the Lord. And when I got home after the church service, I went on the internet and I Googled Jesus Sacred Heart lights. And all of a sudden these images popped up, these paintings called Divine Mercy of a vision that Saint Maria Faustina saw. And I'm reading her diary now. It's just beautiful, and her prayers. And it really helped me to read about her because it showed me that you can have these visions and still be, accepted and traditional in a way. And so, because I'd been having visions my whole life, like her. So I had this Divine Mercy vision, and I made a post as best as I could, piecing together paintings of Jesus I found. And I know Jesus, he's darker skin, he's Middle Eastern looking. But, all you can find on the internet half the time are the Caucasian Jesus. So I put this video together called Jesus Healing Light Meditation on my YouTube channel. You can find it just by putting Jesus Healing Light and then Doreen to find it. And just trying to share this experience I'd had. And then many people told me about Divine Mercy more, and thank you, because I learned from you. And then 2 weeks later, and I think it was January 15th, I was getting ready to fall asleep, and I saw this vision of Jesus again. And this time, I saw more. I saw the earth, and I saw it completely dark. And it wasn't because it was nighttime. There was no lights on. There was no electricity, it seemed like. There was no lights. And then I saw Jesus hovering over the darkened earth, sending energy, or sending light, rather, to this darkened earth. And there was this sense of time urgency. And, Jesus, he didn't say anything, but I really feel like Holy Spirit conveyed to me that I was supposed to help bring Jesus back to those in the New Age. And I prayed about it. And I knew I'd get resistance because in my tours, every time I talked about Jesus, I'd hear this: patriarchy, blah! Bible is the excuse why women are misused, and Bible's the excuse why there's wars and shut down, and don't call him Jesus, call him Sananda, call him Yeshua. Just people shutting down and telling me they were former Catholics. They had a term for it, I can't remember. But, just no one wanted to hear about Jesus unless I was touring in the southern part of the U.S., what they call the Bible Belt, or San Francisco. God bless you, San Francisco, where I could say anything, and they would be open to it. So I knew I'd meet resistance because that had been my case. But lo and behold, I found that people started saying that they had been previously resistant to me talking about Jesus, but that they'd had visions too. And so many people are telling me that they are getting this call of the shepherd calling his flock back and helping us all to escape from limiting beliefs, erroneous paths, paths that are distractions from our life purpose, helping us to truly be happy. And it made me think about all the people I'd met in my 25 years of travel, doing New Age talks around the world. It really made me think about all the people I'd met who were just beautiful souls, so loving, so generous, so much healing energy coming from them, and with a pure intention of helping, just like that woman I'd met at church. But they had life problem after life problem, and so had I in many ways. Up until meeting Michael, many years now, I met him in 2009, up until that time, I'd had really bad relationships with substance abusers, and I'd had issues in my family and such, and I'd gone through this horrendous divorce where my ex-husband got all of my money, my house, all my savings, and the court had just handed him everything, and I had to start over again. And so I looked at all that and I thought, well, we're not being punished because I don't feel like God tests or punish, but was this a law of attraction, cause and effect experience? And I looked at my relationship with Jesus, and then I did something that was also life-changing. I opened the Bible and started reading it again with new eyes. And I'd read the Bible many times. I had listened to the Bible as an audio. I'd watched dozens of videos that were of the Bible, books made into movies that were true to Scripture. I'd attended traditional church. At the time this had happened, Michael and I had been going to a traditional church called Foursquare, and beautiful religion. But I read the Bible with new eyes, and I saw, oh, there's a lot more to Jesus than I had known. I really had what I call the teddy bear version of Jesus, the squeezy, loving, I love you always, Jesus. And he is that way, but he's also got very strong opinions. If you read the Bible, he doesn't mince words when someone upsets him or someone doesn't get his lesson. He's the first to call him on the carpet. And most of his healings, my friend, if you read his healings, there's two things that stood out to me. One was that the person had to ask for the healing, or someone had to ask on their behalf. Jesus didn't walk around touching people and healing them. People had to come to him and say, would you heal me? Or someone had to say, would you heal my relative? And then he would do the healing. So there's the free will where you have to ask for help. And then the second thing I noticed was that a lot of the healing Jesus did was him casting out demons. It wasn't just him saying, think positive. I mean, he said that a few times, as your faith it's done unto you, and people would be healed because they believed, and he taught that. But a lot of it was because there was demons in people. Now, I had been taught in all of my New Age studies that the only demon was the ego, and that there is no evil, and don't even think about it. Don't look at the dark side. Don't look at it. But now what I've come to see is that that's part of the dark side's distraction, is don't look at us, don't notice us, so that it can insidiously creep into our lives and cause those life problems that I had seen for so many years with those in the New Age. Those who were suffering, a lot of it was the lower energies. I mean, demons, it really was. And so I started to pray and research more, and what I found is that there's a real Jesus. There's a Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, who's as real as you and I, and he's with us right now. And some people have asked me, does this mean it's the end of time? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of signs that certainly could point in that direction. I mean, I'm not going to get political with you, but since I was a child, they've been giving me political messages. And every time I share them, I get people saying, don't talk politics. So maybe someday I'll overcome that shyness I have, where people don't want to hear. But I can tell you this, that there's a lot of backroom deals being done right now to make some people a lot of money, and the media is colluding unknowingly to show us images that will upset us to get us to agree to war. And so I can tell you that part. And I don't want to do conspiracy theory with you. It just is what it is. And so you have to use the serenity prayer. What can I control here? Well, you can control where you spend. You can make sure you only spend money in places that really match your beliefs, and you can control doing good in the world, helping those who are underserved, who are hungry, who need clothes, shelter, etc., animals and people. You can do, most of all, be loving. Open your heart to love, even if it's a scary time. The truth is that even if it's not the end of the world, none of us know when it's our time to go. We really don't. You might get a feeling about it, but people leave the earth at any time. Now, this is something that I want to talk about that's a little delicate. Michael introduced me to a whole series of videos that are on YouTube under the search term Jesus NDE, Jesus Near-Death Experience. And there are video after video, if you feel brave and called to look at this on YouTube, of people who've had near-death experiences who've met Jesus and come back. And a lot of them are people who went to what's known as a purgatory, or you could call it hell. I mean, there's a place, and see, I was raised that the only hell is if you're depressed or angry on earth here, and that when you die you go straight to heaven. I have to say that my beliefs have shifted, and that Jesus was the only, if you want to call him an ascended master, the only being who would go rescue these people during near-death experiences. And there's people who come from all faiths, Eastern faiths, agnostic, New Age, who've got testimonies from different video uploaders. So it's not just one place doing all these videos. It's from all around the world. And they all have the same pattern of someone who died, found themselves in this crowded place with people screaming in the afterlife, and they were cold and lonely, and then Jesus came and got them out. And these people said over and over again, it wasn't this ascended master, it wasn't that, and they name them. I don't want to offend anyone here, but only Jesus would go get them. And so they converted to believing in Jesus after they came back from their near-death experience. It's very impressive to read these. And so since none of us know when it's our time to go, I mean, at least make friends with Jesus. Consider this. I know the arguments. I've heard them for 25 years. Yes, the Bible is patriarchal. Yes, it was also written, a lot of it 3,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago if you're in the New Testament. The culture was different then. I mean, I was born in 1958, and the culture was different then. It was very patriarchal when I was growing up. So you can discount the whole thing because you had a bad relationship with your father. I mean, I've heard that, and my father's a great man, but our relationship wasn't perfect either. But is that enough to keep me from connecting with Jesus? Not after what I've seen. No, I'm overcoming all that and going straight to Jesus mode. The other thing that I keep hearing is that the Bible's got a lot of misogyny, against women in it, and yes, it does. Again, I put that into cultural context. I know it's been used to justify crimes against humanity, but I don't go to a church that does that, and you can pick and choose. Don't forsake your whole soul just because of your, you're against this. Please, please, please. It's, the Old Testament does have some troubling parts to it. It talks about slavery, which is very upsetting. It talks about burnt offerings, which is animal slaughter, which is very upsetting. But I have to keep putting it into historical context. And then the other thing I hear is from my friends and the people I meet who are in the gay community about how they've been judged and even kicked out of churches because of their orientation. And it makes me so sad, and if I really thought about it, I'd get angry too, but it mostly makes me sad for the people in the church community not having an opportunity to meet this wonderful person and just judging them on their orientation. And then also I'm sad for the person in the gay community who feels like an outsider and feels like Jesus doesn't love him or her. God doesn't love him or her. And that's farthest thing from the truth. Jesus and God love you. They love, love, love you. That's why you were created. You were created in love, and they never stopped loving you. And being gay is, from the people I know and the scientific studies I've read, it's not a choice. It's something you're born with a few exceptions of people who may, experiment. But those who are born gay, they know it. And so I feel like God created all this, so we have to just acknowledge it. I think in the Bible times where there was talk about homosexuality, I think it had to do with trying to build up the population at that time and such. And besides, when I read Leviticus, which is the Bible chapter that has all the rules, there is no way anyone on this earth is maintaining all those rules. Maybe those who are Hasidics, because they don't cut their beard. I mean, it says that in the Bible, you're never supposed to cut your beard or trim your temple hair. What man do you know who's never trimmed his beard? I don't know any. I mean, it says crazy things for this time, but they made sense at that time. So we have to put all that in a historical context and not throw out the baby with the bathwater, which means there's great guidelines for healthy, happy living in the Bible. Some of the Psalms are just beautiful. The Gospels, Jesus, you can just buy a Bible that's got what they call red lettering, or I've got one that's blue, turquoise lettering of Jesus's words, and just read those. And he's such a great teacher and way shower about what you want to do and not do for healthy living. I wished I'd read it more carefully. There's passages in the Bible that say, stay far away from angry people. Gosh, I wish I'd read that a long time ago, because I spent so many years being with angry people trying to make them happy. And it's a recipe for frustration, and it can be a recipe for abuse, which I have experienced. So, there's just so many tidbits about helping your career and your finances and your health and your self-esteem, and even how to get a better night's sleep, and definitely how to spiritually protect yourself. Ephesians has got great messages about the armor of God, and just beautiful passages. So I really am just encouraging you, like I did when I was first talking about angels 25 years ago. I said, be like a good scientist and experiment with this, and just see if you feel happier. We'll do a prayer before we end this video, and just see how it makes you feel. It's your free will choice. Like it says in the Bible, you have to go ask Jesus for a healing. He's not imposing it on it. He respects your free will choices. But I want to tell you about the vision I just most recently had. And that was in April 2017, where I saw Jesus. This is the third time. And he was translucent this time. And it was very fleeting. And he said very clearly, he conveyed that I could feel this sense of time urgency again, to have people return to worshiping God was what the message I heard. Tell people to stop worshiping the devil and start worshiping God. Now, I don't like to use the word devil. Being raised in the New Age, I'm so sensitive to how that word is a trigger word. How I translated it was materiality, that people are very worried about, material things instead of their spiritual thing, their real food for their soul. And so he wants us to stop focusing on all that external so much and really focus on the internal, the taking care of your soul. It's one of the reasons why I got baptized on February 25th, 2017, because I was raised in New Age churches that don't baptize children. They only christen them. And so I'd gone my whole life, and I guess I missed that memo that you're supposed to get baptized. Again, I was just in that New Age community that doesn't talk about this. And so once I feel like I woke up when I had the Jesus 2 visions in January, I went to my priest at the Episcopal Church, and I said, please, I've worked so hard to help others. I need to help myself now. I need to take care of my own soul. Will you baptize me? And he agreed, and I took classes on that, and I was baptized in the name of the Holy Trinity. And it was like the ultimate detox, my friend. It was just beautiful. If you haven't been baptized or you want to do it again as an adult, let me highly recommend it. Now I can feel the difference between clean energy and lower energy, to the degree that I just don't want to swim in the dirty waters anymore. I just don't want to even go there. I want to stay in the clean waters of Jesus's love and light. And so you've seen my work shift, and I know for some people they tell me it's too religious or too Christian, but you know what my reaction to that has been? Thank you. It's actually a compliment to me when you say that, or someone says that. I really feel like I'm happier now than I've ever been in my whole entire life, because I truly feel, and I know that I've found the real Jesus. There is a faux Jesus going around, who's teaching counter to the Bible, And just beware. I mean, there's channeled books by supposedly by Jesus, but they're not in accordance to what Jesus taught in the Bible. So if you're not sure if what you're reading is really in the light, just pray and ask for guidance, or compare what you're reading to the Gospels, the red letter writing of the Bible, what Jesus said. And if it's the opposite of that, then heads up. You might be reading something that is sometimes called the enemy has been sending to distract you from your path. So let's just all let's watch each other's backs is the bottom line. Let's pray together. Dear God, dear Creator, we come to you with humbleness and our hearts open and our minds open for you to show us the way. Help us to know what the next step is for each of us on our spiritual path. If there's any part of our spiritual path that we have veered off on and we've been distracted from who we are supposed to be and who we are supposed to do and what we're here to do, please, God, show us the light. And we come to you with asking for forgiveness for any mistakes we've made. We know that you forgive us as soon as we admit these to you. We thank you for this. And dear God, please help us to reconnect with your Son, with the real Jesus. Help us to connect with him in a love-based way, a real relationship, a personal relationship with him. Dear Jesus, please continue to appear to us in dreams and visions and messages with the Holy Spirit as our teacher. Please keep us spiritually safe and cleanse us of any negative energy that we may have absorbed from our missteps, from distractions, from fears. Please guide those of us who are in the New Age community to find a path that we can feel is love-based and we feel honored and that is still of your will. Please, dear God, help us all to overcome our defenses, to overcome any lower energies, to overcome the ego, to overcome evil or the enemy or the satanic forces or anything that we could call it that could have been influencing our ways in the wrong direction. Please help us to heal, dear Jesus. We come to you with our hearts and our minds open in humbleness, asking for your healing. Please bless us and guide us and shepherd us and help us to overcome willfulness and be directed by thine will. And help us to not be distracted by materiality, even don't be distracted by worrying about materiality. Please help us to really know the truth, know you, God, and what your will is for us. Help us to be so clear that we can help others as well. And what I've learned from my biblical studies is that Jesus promised that whatever we pray to God about in his name, thine will be done. So we close prayers by saying, in Jesus' name, amen. And I want to just praise you for staying through this whole video. I know that some of it is really different from what you've heard me say, and again, I apologize if there's anything that I've written or taught that could have been a part of distracting you off your path. I'm here as a humble servant of God to correct my previous mistakes and to be a part of the Jesus as the shepherd calling the flock back, and that's you and me. So we're all doing this together. We're all learning and growing together, and I want to just tell you I'm praying for you. I'm praying so much for you, that your happiness and your health and your loved ones and everything on earth is protected and just so beautiful. So God bless you, my friend. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you again soon on another video.